I use for loops far more than I use while loops. It seems like most of the time I'm reading a certain number of items, and for loops are perfect for that. I use while loops when I create, for example, Java programs where I need the loop to execute up until the program quits. In those cases, I'll use an infinite while true loop to accomplish a task. For web programming, I almost exclusively use for and for each loops. The for loop in most programming languages follows the following structure. So we would have something like this: for, actually let's put this in a comment, for, and then 3 statements inside here. So the first statement, and then of course each one of them are going to be separated by the semicolon, is expression before. So we're going to do something. This is most of the time, this is some kind of initialization, such as, for example, in our while loop when we looked at let's actually go to the while loop, where we initialized, in this case, I is equal to 0. In our for loop, this is where we would say I is equal to 0. So this is an expression that happens before the loop body. Then we have an expression that comes before loop body, but it comes after this initialization step. So this is, if you compare it to a while loop, this is like this expression right here. So you have your initialization step where I is equal to 0, then you have your expression, some kind of testing that you're doing over and over again. So before it actually gets into the for loop body, you're going to do this kind of test. So this is expression before basically the loop body. So then the next step is you have whatever's inside the loop body. So then that gets executed, and then finally you're going to have another expression that gets executed inside this for loop syntax, and that's expression after the loop body. So just to kind of recap over once more, you have this for loop, you start off with the for keyword, you have an expression before, which is the initialization phase, usually like I equal to 0. Then you have the testing portion, which happens right before the loop body gets executed. So you have this expression, some kind of test, values normally to true or false. Then you're going to do your loop body, and then inside here, you're going to have some kind of expression after. And that expression after is normally going to be something like that I++, where it increments that counter variable. So let's just go ahead and write that while loop inside here and just basically compare it. I think that'll be the best introduction to the for loops since we already have looked at the while loop. So we have the initialization phase, the I is equal to 0. Over here, while I is less than 10, we're going to go ahead and echo I dot break and then I++. Expression before loop body, the loop body, expression after if we wanted to convert this to a for loop. But let's go ahead and run this, make sure everything still works properly. Let's do our for loop, and there we go. That's the while loop that just got executed. But let's convert that into the for loop. So basically that's the for loop structure. And we're going to say while I is equal to 0, or I is equal to 0 is initialization phase, and then while is less than 10, I++, and this just becomes second nature for you to write it out that way if you've never written it out. And then we're just going to say echo I dot break. So in here, we don't need to increment I. In that case, basically what we're saying, I is equal to 0. Is it 0 less than 10? Yes, it is. Okay, go ahead and execute that, and then increment I, which now it's 1. So now you skip this portion, you go back over here, is 1 less than 10? Yes. Display it, increment it, and keep going over and over again. Could you increment in here? Sure. But then at that point, it's going to say I is equal to 0. 0 less than 10? Yes, it is. Okay, display 0 and then increment it, so now it's 1, and then increment it again, so now it's 2. Is 2 less than 10? Yes, it is. Display 2, increment it, now it's 3, now it's 4, and basically you're going to go 0, 2, 4, 6, 8 instead of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But let's go ahead and keep it simple like this, and just make sure that inside your loop body you're not actually double incrementing just because you have this post increment that happens after the loop body gets executed. So let's go ahead and refresh. As you can see, we get the same thing, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So in most programming languages that offer the for loop and don't offer the for each loop, the for loop is the preferred choice when looping through an array of data. So for example, let's say things I hate is going to be the array that we're going to create this time. We can start off by saying one of the things that I hate are lists. Repetition is probably number 2 on the list. Entitlement, really don't like entitlement. And my job. So hit subscribe and watch my videos so I can get paid and quit my job. Since the for loop has the counter, it's perfect for our index variable. So let's go ahead and create the for loop. And we're going to basically say I is equal to 0 to start off with index 0. And while I is less than 1, 2, 3, 4, so we're going to go from 0 to 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. And then after each loop body, we're going to increment it by 1. And then we know that we can say, basically from our while loop tutorial, that we can add this variable to our array as our index, and it's going to change every single time after every single repetition, and it's basically going to just go through the array. So it's going to say list, repetition, entitlement, and my job. And we can go ahead, go back to the browser, hit refresh, and there we go. It will loop through everything. Now, just like before, if we look at the while loop, we could go ahead and do this count function instead of hard coding the number of elements in the array. We could say, well, I is less than count things I hate, which should return 4, and then if we ever modify this list, it'll return how many ever elements are in there. So let's just go ahead and click refresh, and there we go. Still displays the exact same thing. We don't have to increment lists. We can also work our way backwards as long as we have the logic in our head. So let's say that we want to start with the last element and work our way backwards. So let's say we wanted to print this list out as my job, entitlement, repetition, list, instead of list, repetition, entitlement, my job. How would we do that? Well, it's just modifying the internal a little bit and figuring out exactly how we're going to do this. So we want to start off with the last element. So we're going to initialize that as the count of things I hate, which returns 4. And here we have 0, 1, 2, 3 elements. So the last element inside here is 3. So every single time you can subtract a 1 from the count function as long as you're passing the array inside to the count function. And it's going to know this element or this array has 4 elements, but the index value is always the count minus 1. So that's where we would initialize this. So basically we initialized I as 3. Now what? Well, we need to keep doing this as long as I is greater than or equal to 0. So as long as we haven't reached, as long as we haven't gone past this zeros, right? So we're going to start off 3, 2, 1, 0. We don't want to get into -1. We're going to keep doing this. So as long as I is greater than or equal to 0, keep doing this. And you might have guessed it, instead of I++, we're going to do I minus minus. So I is going to get initialized to 3. Is 3 greater than 0? Yes, it is. Execute the loop body. And then decrement it by 1. So now it's 2. Is 2 greater than 0? Yes. Is 1 greater than 0? Yes. Is 0 greater than or equal to 0? Yes. And then once it gets down to -1, it's going to say it's -1 greater than or equal to 0. No. And it's going to quit the loop body. And basically we would just repeat the same thing. Things I hate, I dot break, and execute it in the browser. And now you can see that we start from the end and work our way backwards. So that's it when it comes to for loops. It seems like we're looping through arrays a lot. So what happens when an array has a key instead of an index? Well, PHP has thought of that too and has come up with a really good solution, which is called the foreach loop, and we'll look at that next.